on Air with Douglas, where fans are connected to their favorite celebrities. And now, here's your host, Douglas.
Hello, everybody. Happy Hump Day. What a good way to spend tonight with us. It is January 22nd. I come to you live at 4:30 p.m. on the West Coast over here. And you can catch our guest tonight on this week's episode of Bones right here right on Fox. And also, there's a little extra added bonus to this episode because Michelle Clooney, who played Melanie Marcos on Queer as Folk, will be on that episode as well. So definitely don't miss that on Fox this Friday. So without further ado, I'm just going to get right into it because everybody's been waiting for this. So Scott Lowell is with us, who is best known for his role on Showtime's groundbreaking television show Queer as Folk as Ted Schmidt. So we're going to be catching up with him now. So welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
No problem. Thank you for putting this together. I was trying to get you and Peter together, but he's really busy with the Fosters, so it's really tough to get a date for him. So I was trying to do like reunion shows, but
sure. Yeah, no, he's running a family entertainment empire now, and I don't get to see him as often as I would like to because of that. So so we're all having trouble getting in touch with Peter, but it's all for a good cause. The Fosters.
Oh, of course, yes. Just
such a terrific show. I'm so proud of him. So
yes, I am too.
I'll see him when he gets head above water.
Yes. Now you guys are going to be in Spain in a couple months, right? For the tour.
Yes, very excited. We're going to be in Bilbao in the end of March. Peter, Gail, Randy, and myself, and really, really excited to get back to Europe and see all the European fans again. And I've never been to Spain, so I'm really looking forward to experiencing things there. Hopefully, I'll get to do some traveling after the convention. But it's really great. It's really it's an extraordinary thing that we started this journey. Almost 14 years ago now, and it still kind of reverberates all over the world, and we find new fans every day, and hopefully it'll continue to grow. I mean, Netflix is finally going to be carrying at least the discs for our show. Hopefully they'll stream us sometime in the near future too, but starting February 1st, you can get the DVDs through Netflix, and hopefully that'll also bring a new generation of Queer as Folk fans, and it's wonderful to be a part of something that still has that kind of resonance, and throughout the world too. It's wonderful.
Exactly. Yeah, I had Gail on, who's best known for Brian Kinney, the infamous Brian Kinney. I had him on a couple of weeks ago, and he was the first of my little surprise package that I'm working on for all of you, and I had people from every part of the world waking up early, going to bed late, from all over the world, and it was just amazing. I really had no idea that it was such a worldwide, it's taking on, like you said, taking on life worldwide. I just watched it, every week here in my own little world, and I had no idea that it's taken its grew legs and crawl all over the world. So that's got to be an amazing feeling to know that wherever you go, you are recognized.
It really is, and it's been, I didn't really realize the scope of it myself until we put together the first convention that we did in Cologne, Germany a couple of years ago, and to have people from 29 different countries coming to a fan convention. And, and fan conventions usually are for science fiction shows or horror films. It's pretty rare to have fan conventions for what's essentially a relationship-based drama. So to get that many people and get that many people from so many different countries, that really was very eye-opening for me and very humbling that, again, like I say, 8 years after we went off air to have that kind of following is wonderful. And the fans, we just have the best fans. They're so devoted and so intelligent about the show. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, there's people out there who've kept your characters alive through fan fiction. I've been, I didn't know about this, and I've been reading some, and I'm like, wow, this is really great that this, the lives of these, these core characters that we grew to love are living on in other people's fantasies and fiction.
Yeah, it's really amazing, and when Queer as Folk first came on the air in December of 2000. All this stuff, I mean, the internet was still a baby. We were all babies, but the internet was still a baby. And, even this notion of having message boards and things like that, and that people were putting fan fiction up, it was all very new. So I feel like we were one of those very first shows that kind of helped develop this whole thing. And even television shows being on DVDs, I think when our DVDs came out, at least here in the States, there was our show, The Sopranos and Sex and the City, and that was about all you could buy. I mean, people thought it was absurd to put TV shows on DVD. So we were there in the beginning, and it's kind of amazing to see where things are going. Now, I can't even imagine if we're just starting off now with, with social media, with Twitter and Facebook and things like that. The size of the audience might even be triple or quadruple what it is now, because it's been a slow growing thing in some ways, and it's still kind of a niche show, I think, and but those people in that niche are so rabid and devoted, and it's really such an honor.
Yeah. So if you were to just think back and, we saw how it ended for Ted on the air. It's been, I think, like you said, 6 or how many years has it been since it went off the air?
It will be 2005, so it'll be
9 years.
It'll be 9 years this coming spring. Yeah.
Okay, so where do you think Ted Schmidt's at right now? If you were like just thinking about him and what his life would be, almost a decade later, what do you think he's up to?
I hope he's quite happy somewhere. We always joke that he and Emmett, along with whoever their partners might be, might go and run a successful chain of bed and breakfast somewhere. I personally would like them to be in Hawaii because I like Hawaii so much, but and it's warm there, much warmer than Pittsburgh or Toronto. But I think I would trust that the lessons he's kind of learned through those 5 years of the show in terms of learning to love himself and be ready for a relationship, I think would have stuck by the end, and I think he would have grown weary of certainly the party lifestyle and going out and dancing, all that kind of stuff, and I think he's probably settled down into a much quieter lifestyle now, but running a business one way or another. Yeah.
Now, in these shows on TV, so much of it, even the show Bones that you're on, where the leads, get together, where their characters get together, and whether it be at the end of the series or in the middle, what did you think when Emmett and Ted were going to start a relationship? Did you think that was a good idea, or were you kind of scared of it, or what was the fan reaction?
It was an interesting thing. We, at the end of the first season of the show, Dan Lippman and Ron Cowan, who are the creators of the show, actually invited us all to come in and pitch storylines to them at the end of the first season. And unknown to either of us, Peter and I both kind of went in and pitched a storyline about Ted and Emmett getting together. I think they were different than what ended up being. I think it ended up. I think we discussed maybe it being kind of a drunken one-night thing that happened and how do they deal with the repercussions. But when the idea of the long-term thing came up, I think we both thought it was a great idea, and it was, what as often happened in Queer as Folk, there were many unique opportunities to kind of use our real-life relationships in the show and let them inform our performances. And Peter and I quickly became best friends off camera as well as on camera, which served a great purpose in many of the storylines, but especially in that one because all the awkwardness of those first sex scenes and the kissing and things like that was very real, and that was Peter and me going through this weird thing of, oh my God, we have to kiss now and explore. And kind of do these things that as friends, we never would expect to do in real life. So, we already had the closeness of best friends that we could play on, and then adding that layer, I think, just really helped. And, the third season is one of my favorite seasons for many reasons, but that's a chief reason amongst them, that the majority of my scenes, if you watch that season, at least for the first half of it until the drugs kick in, almost every single scene I have is with Peter, and we just, we as actors click so well. We get each other. We kind of, it was always easy. to work with Peter, and we always were there to raise the bar for each other, and we kind of were really good at getting the best out of each other, I think. So, and I think Dan and Ron realized that as well, and blessed us with that storyline, and then all the stuff that happened afterwards with the crystal meth addiction and how that affected the relationship as well. I mean, the absolutely most difficult day on the set, and I think Peter will attest to this as well, was the awful scenes where Ted and Emmett are really splitting up when Ted is just being so awful to him, and Emmett finally leaves. That was awful for Peter and I to have to go through that and treat each other that way. It was awful, just awful.
Yeah.
So I couldn't have been more thrilled that they came up with that storyline, and I'm very proud of the work we did together on it.
Yeah, you guys, and it was good that, because in the gay community, it's tough to be in a relationship and then be friends afterwards. So it was so good that, the writers kept you guys, so close all the way up until the end. And despite, the break there where you guys, Ted and it did not speak at all. But
yeah.
They came back together.
Yeah, I agree. And, and they didn't make it easy, which is good. I mean, it wasn't, they didn't just get back together again. I mean, they made it a very difficult journey for them to find their way back into each other's lives. And I think that's very honest. And again, as much of Queer as Folk was, that it's a universal storyline in a lot of ways too. And I've certainly, as a heterosexual, gone through those same kind of things with female friends who are best of friends. And when you try to mix in a romantic relationship, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. And it can, it's a very risky, dangerous thing to play with. So, and again, I think that's one of those reasons where Queer as Folk expanded beyond the niche show that Showtime, I think, first expected it to be. One that would predominantly have a gay audience, to one where at least half the audience was straight because people could relate to it, and that was the beautiful thing about the show.
Yeah. Now, speaking of the crystal meth storyline, I mean, that's some of the best acting I've ever seen on television. You did a fantastic job, not only the first time around, but when Ted got back involved and he was gang raped. That storyline was just that those scenes were just when Ted is coming to and realizing when they're watching the video on the screen. I just was like, you just were fantastic. If there were Oscars for that, I mean, that was just fantastic acting. So how did you get into that role? Where did you have experience with somebody in your life that had it, or did you spend time around others? How did you get to that point? Because you were spot on.
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It was really important for us to get that storyline right. And again, that was back in 2003. We were doing that storyline, so more than a decade ago, and it was really very early on in Crystal Meth Crisis that I think still sweeps the world as well as big parts of the gay community. And so it felt really important to us to get it right. And so we did a lot of work. I mean, Dan and Ron did a lot of work and research in their writing. For me, I mean, I had my own brief drug experiences that I could go off of physiologically to understand how the drug affects the body and what it does to the brain. And I have some friends of mine who are in the program for various drug and alcohol addictions, and I would go to meetings and listen into the stories of people. And we had a wonderful nurse who dealt with crystal meth patients, who also was a great consultant and a great help. And then the rest of it was just who the character is and allowing myself to go to some really deep, dark places for that. And that was the struggle all along with me and Ted. It was, it could be very difficult to leave him at work, but you always, you have to bring some of yourself to bear. And I've certainly, in earlier parts of my life, struggled with self-loathing and many of the things that Ted does, and the anger that can come along with some of that. So it was just kind of a combination of all those and I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe. I don't know where it comes from. You know, I'm glad it was there to be used for a good purpose, and I can't tell you how many people who, you know, beyond thanking me for doing the show, thanked me especially for that storyline and how much it helped them or helped a friend realize that they were struggling with the same thing, and that's really important. And that's, again, where, you know, I think queer as folk sometimes can get overlooked as a show that was a lot of fun and a bit of a soap opera or what have you. But, again, putting it in context for what time it was out, it was really groundbreaking in so many ways and really dealing with topics that hadn't been dealt with on television at that point in time, and especially not just storylines about the gay community in an honest way. And, I'm glad. And again, I was really, really so honored that Dan and Ron entrusted me with that storyline, and I think he was the right guy to do it. You know, a lot of people said, you know, they were surprised it was Ted and not Brian to go through that, but it's more the Teds that are susceptible to that. People who have low self-esteem, people to whom these, you know, this drug can seem like a miracle, and before you know it, you're hooked. It's such a dangerous drug. It's just an evil thing. And it continues to be, you know, such a scourge. So, for whatever part, you know, our putting that storyline out there has helped people, I'm especially grateful for that.
Yeah, definitely. Now, besides the relationship that Ted had with Emmett, we also had a relationship with Ted and Blake, played by Dean Armstrong. And Dean was, I mean, he wasn't in a lot, you know, a whole lot, but, you know, the scenes with you two, I mean, were just another, you know, dynamic that were great. And, you know, we saw Blake the first season, you know, when Ted gets a little bit too much of that drug that's in the liquid, and then he, you know, he comes back to life after Brian's having sex in the hospital. And then, exactly, in hell. And then, you know, we see Blake, you know, occasionally, and what a twist it was, you know, when Ted goes to rehab and checks himself in, and he thinks Blake is, you know, just another person that's checked in, and then to see that he really turned his life around, and he's the actual therapist. I mean, that was just so good, because it showed that, you know, Ted could get better as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's, you know, I feel like I'm patting them on the back too much, but Dan and Ron and the writers of our show don't nearly get as much credit as they deserve. I mean, that's because that's all great character stuff, you know. And that's also keeping an eye open. I mean, you're right. I mean, you know, especially in the first season of the show was very much based on the British Queer as Folk series, and they were kind of obliged to follow the template quite a bit. And fortunately, you know, my character in the British version died after his overdose, and they were kind enough to keep me alive and just put me into a coma for a little bit. But similarly, that character of Blake was not, I mean, that was supposed to be it. You know, you'd never see that guy again. But Dan and Ron and the producers and the writers of the show sensed, you know, a chemistry between Dean and I, and kept that thing going. And even, you know, the stuff in the end of the first season when Blake comes back and finding him in that, you know, that meth house and picking him up. It's all, you know, Ted, you know, he loved operas, and he loved to live his life like an opera, and, you know, and I think that a lot of that storyline was like that. I mean, it was like La Boheme or something, you know, finding your tweaked out lover in this hellhole of a place and lifting him up and kissing him. It was all very romantic and lush and operatic, and of course, because it was involved with Ted, doomed to failure. So the way they kept weaving that storyline in and out over the years, I thought was really quite brilliant. And I didn't see that coming. When we would get the scripts, I didn't know that Blake was coming back, and I got the script back, you know, a week beforehand, and saw that that's what was happening. I thought that's just brilliant, you know, and just what he needs to help himself out, and of course, you know, creating more confusion too of, you know, patients and their therapists and how they can blur the lines. So, and then in the end, to not have him return until Ted was absolutely ready, until he was absolutely ready to kind of give up and be satisfied and happy just living his life on his own. Only then could this guy return, which I thought was really clever. So and Dean was just a terrific actor to work with, and we we were friends, and from the first times we worked together, it all just clicked, and and I've often said, for me as well, being that that our first intimate scene together was not only my first on-screen kiss, but also my first time kissing a man that romantically, and I couldn't have asked for a better partner in that than Dean, who is a beautiful guy, and it was very easy to kind of throw the switch and find the chemistry with him. So it's all just very good luck that he came along to our show.
Definitely. Now, someone on Twitter, and forgive me, I know you're listening from another country, but I don't know how to pronounce your name. It's TSUKIGALLETA. She says, what does he think about the development in Ted and Brian's friendship? Which was a twist as well, because Brian was such a dick to everybody, especially Teddy.
Right.
And Ted and Brian ended up working together, and at the company that he created. So what did you think about that?
Again, I think that's I loved it, first of all, and again, I think that was great writing and great observation by Dan and Ron and the writers to see the comic potential there, that these guys are such opposites. But it also makes a lot of logical sense. I mean, especially at that low point when nobody wanted anything to do with Ted, Brian would be the only one who would say, can I say the F word? We're on the
right?
I can do it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. So he was the only one he's the only one who would say fuck it. This guy, he's a fuck up, but hey, he's living his truth, and he's and he's the only one who would give him a shot like that. And also, when there's as I recall, a wonderful moment when Ted, agrees to take the job after he kind of fails as a singing waiter, and he finally agrees to work with Brian, and Brian says something to him like, if you fuck up, I'll kill you. And Ted kind of, we kind of played it, Gail and I, that I kind of laughed a little at him, like, oh, that's cute, but then he kept staring daggers at me, and no, he means it, and he would. The second he stepped out of line or fucked up, he'd be dead. So that's, Brian being the truth teller and the one who lives by that code that he lives by, it made sense that he's the only one who would give Ted a chance at that point in time. And then beyond that, I mean, Gail and I are quite good friends, and again, that helped the chemistry there. But it's, they're the perfect foils for each other in a lot of ways, and I think it led to in the last couple seasons of the show some really, really funny scenes. And Brian wasn't often involved in comic scenes, so I think it helped bring out some more colors in his character as well. Again, that's just really good writing and good, and knowing your characters well enough to see, all right, what if we put this piece with this piece? How would that work? And would this mix well together? And I think they hit it out of the park. I think it was a really great thing. Yeah.
Gale was, he was, his character, I mean, he really brought the dick to the dickhead. I mean, he was just such an ass. I mean, but he was the villain, per se, of the show, not really a villain, but he was the one you loved to hate. Because deep down inside, you knew from the very beginning he loved Sunshine, Mr. Justin. But, and it was very sad, though, to get and wait, because I just relived watching the series last month, but when you get to the end and then Justin isn't there, and it's just like, what were they thinking? I mean, there was no happy ever after for Brian. He was just there alone on the dance floor until the credits, come up, and it's just, wow. I don't have the writers on the show, but I just was really surprised by that, because it was fairy tale in the making, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to write the ending of a show, and many series have difficulties with it, and I know a lot of fans are disappointed because they had so much invested in that relationship. But and yes, they could have driven off happily into the sunset together. But in some ways, I don't know. I mean, it's something I've gone back and forth on over the years. But there's something perfect in that he helped Justin become the man that he is, and the whole series, was about these boys becoming men, and that includes Justin. And Justin, was 17 when we first met him, and went through so much over the course of those 5 seasons. And in some ways, he had to go. To become his own man. And who knows if they come back together or not? I don't know, but it's heartbreaking and difficult. But it's kind of part of that, like My Fair Lady, or any kind of story like that where somebody is the teacher. Inevitably, the pupil has to go away because they've either outgrown the teacher or they just need to go and prove themselves. And I think part of Justin's journey was that he had to go prove himself as an individual away from this relationship. And that's the heartbreak of being Brian or being the teacher too, is that sometimes you have to let that happen. And what's heartbreaking is for a guy that, professed not to believe in love and only to believe in fucking, for him finally to really learn and experience that kind of love, to have it shattered, is very, it happens. It's truthful, and I know, but I know it's disappointing. I get that people are disappointed, but I don't know. I guess I tend towards, I like bittersweet, and it's a very bittersweet ending. And to me, it was a braver choice, although a lot of fans I know might say it was the stupider choice.
Yeah. Now, when Gail was on, and at Days Live 414 just reminded me, Gail was on and mentioned that you and he had talked and thrown around some ideas about, bringing like a reunion show or movie or web series or something like that. Is there anything you would like to do with the characters and bring them back for one last hurrah or something, or do a Kickstarter campaign to get a movie like Veronica Mars or something like that? We talked about that just about a year ago after the fan support for Veronica Mars brought them such great amounts of money to help fund the Veronica Mars movie that's going to be that's in production now and going to be coming out soon. And we talked about whether or not something like that would be possible with Queer as Folk. And I think we're all open to it. If the funding and the support was there, and if we got some really terrific writers to come up with a story, because I don't know, because you certainly can't have these characters in the same place they were 10, 12 years ago. Yeah. They had to have grown and changed and evolved. And what does that mean? Because it's difficult. I mean, Queer as Folk was Babylon. Queer as Folk was Woody's. And in some ways, if these guys still, who would now be into their 40s, are still living that life, it would be a little sad, I think. In some way. Do you know what I mean? So so the difficulty is, where are they and what are they doing, and how are they living in the culture now with everything shifting? But I think there's something very interesting now with things changing so much now, because when we last left them, we were still under the reign of Bush II, when it was a rather dark time, and now as the rainbow flags kind of wave a little brighter through at least a good part of this country, how would that change them, and where do you find the drama? Where are the tensions? So it would take that, but I think we would all be open. We all love these characters. We all love the fact that fans all over the world love these characters, and if there were rather more stories to tell, we would love to tell them and love to be a part of having them told. It's kind of beyond all of us right now what those stories would be exactly. But from what I understand,
the Veronica Mars movie came out of a guy who was a very talented screenwriter, but he was a young guy who was just a fan of the show, and he wrote the screenplay, and that was enough to kind of get things going. So who knows where the ideas will come from, and if they're good enough, I think we'd all be interested. And that was honestly surprising to me, and shows an evolution in Gail's relationship with the show, because I think when we finished the show, he was very much done with it, and it seemed very clear to me that he would not be interested in doing such a thing. And the fact that he was the one to kind of come to me and say, hey, this kind of seems interesting to me, what do you think we could do, shows, how much time has kind of given him a perspective on how important and how wonderful it was, the experiences we all had and we shared, and how again, overwhelming the fan support continues to be for this show. And we'd like to give back to that. It's everybody kind of gives to us so much with their support, and it would be nice to give back to everybody by giving them some new, be it an episode or a show or film or whatever would be terrific.
Yeah, well, you would definitely have the funding, because when I got done talking to Dick Gale, and we mentioned that, I had probably, I couldn't even count how many tweets that they would donate everything they had to make this happen. So there's definitely passion, and the funding is out there. And just as I was talking about earlier, the fan fiction out there. There are so many people who've done so many great continuations of the story that just like that screener for Veronica Mars, there's one of those out there for Queer as Folk as well.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. Now back then we didn't have the instant access that we have now with social media and Facebook and Twitter and all that. Now, and I don't know this, and this is my bad for not knowing, but why wasn't there a season 6? Why was it only just 5 seasons? Do you have an answer? Do you know? Because I just never did find out.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Yeah, we originally we were all contracted to 6 seasons when we first signed our initial contracts. And what ended up happening was, after the second season of our show, we kind of, when we all first signed on, because the majority of us were unknowns on the show, and because this show was such a huge risk for Showtime. Showtime really went out on such a limb. The property of Queer as Folk, the British version of Queer as Folk, was shopped around here. HBO was only interested or willing to do a 2-hour movie based on it, and Showtime won the bidding by saying, we're going to do an entire season, we're going to do 22 episodes of this show, without even looking at a pilot. We're just going to do it, which was very brave of them at the time, and they needed to take a risk, and they needed to gamble, because they didn't really have much on the air at that point in time. And HBO already had Sopranos, they had Sex and the City. They were kind of becoming the network they are now, and Showtime was way behind the game, and they needed us to kind of be their Sopranos. So they were taking a risk, and they, as has often been told, Linda Lowy, who's was our amazing casting director for the show, she sent out requests for people to come and audition, and was literally turned down by about 2,000 actors who refused to come into audition for this show. Entire talent agencies would not send in any of their talent. So it opened the doors for people like myself, Peter, Gail, Randy, Taya, Michelle, who either had limited or no experience, to get on. Hal was already doing Talk Soup at the time, so was somewhat of a known entity. And, of course, Dame Sharon Gless was already a multi-Emmy award-winning actress. But so because of the risk Showtime was taking on the show and on us, our original salaries were, relative to most TV salaries, quite low. And in fact, my agents first told me to turn down the deal when they got it, but it was something I couldn't say no to. So, but after the show became a success and became their number one show, and we were kind of in the cultural zeitgeist and all that stuff, we all decided to kind of get together and renegotiate our contracts. And in doing that and getting our salaries up to a place that was commensurate with what a number one show of a cable network should be, the head of Showtime at the time felt like part of the negotiations was, okay, fine, but I can only guarantee you 5 seasons, and so our contracts were amended to just be for 5 seasons. And so then what they faced, what ended up happening is Jerry Offsay, who was our first head of Showtime, who brought us to television, left the network, and Bob Greenblatt, who now runs NBC, took over Showtime. And he was a big fan of the show, and often, told me that he thought Queer as Folk was Showtime's Beverly Hills 90210, that he could see it going on for years and years and years. But what ended up happening when they faced doing a sixth season was that it would have meant that they would have had to write new contracts for all of us from scratch, and they just, I think, and I maybe there was more going on behind the scenes, but it was a combination of them feeling like they just couldn't afford to do that. We weren't sure that Dan and Ron would be coming back for a sixth season. They were starting to feel like they had told the stories they wanted to tell, and so I think because of the financial reasons, the fact that, especially at that time, it wasn't a sure thing that some of the cast members would want to do a sixth season beyond their contracts. It just seemed like the right thing to do was to know that the fifth season was the last season and to go out on top rather than, no pun intended, rather than, go on too long and jump too many sharks with the show. So I think that's what ended up happening. We all loved doing it, but there was just, these things happen in show business where there's just a number of factors that go into the decisions of when it's time to end a show, and those, from what I understand, were the main reasons why. And so, we knew from the beginning of the fifth season that it would be our last, and that way Dan and Ron were able to write the ending they wanted to write. Whether or not, fans like that ending is debatable, but they were, that's the story they wanted to tell. And so that's how that happened. It's a little wonky, I know.
Yeah, but we're glad that we're glad. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's not a very sexy story because it all comes down to business, but
I know.
What happened.
It's awful because, nowadays, it's been a decade later, but it's so hard. As you're a working actor, but it's so hard with us fans with television shows anymore because they cancel them so quickly now. Either one episode or a half of a season, or after one season, and it's just, it's so hard for me as a fan of television to get invested in characters anymore because they take them away so quickly. So I kind of wait until I know they've either been picked up or renewed because it's so hard. I feel bad for the actors who, they get this role, they've been waiting all their life to get a good role on a good television show, and then the Nielsen family or whoever the hell it is out there decides, no, we're not going to keep you, and it's just really tough. So I'm glad that back then you guys, had such a great special thing that did last 5 years. So very thankful for that. It is really remarkable,
and you're very right. Now it feels like now it seems more common for shows to, eventually, if they have any success, to go on, to 8, 9, 10 seasons. But back then, especially, 5 seasons of a show was huge. Very few shows made it that far but I think things have been really shifting, and I think they'll continue to shift because of cable television and because of the model that they're creating. Already, the head of Fox Television has said that they're going to do away with this traditional model of pilot season, which is what how television is run since the beginning of television, where usually this time of year every network produces maybe 12 or more first episodes of a show, and they fully produce them and cast actors and all that kind of stuff. And then they maybe pick 1 or 2 that will actually end up on the air, and then they see how they do. And like you say, if they don't seem to do well the first couple of weeks, they may just pull the plug. That famously almost happened with Seinfeld years ago, that it wasn't doing well, and it takes someone believing in something and being brave enough to keep it on the air. But now, Fox is going to stop doing that, and he wants to do more like what cable TV is doing, which is where they develop a project fully first before they shoot an episode. So rather than just doing a test episode, they'll work on the script, they'll make sure it's right before they put it on the air, so it's got a fighting chance, and they'll keep it on. For the most part, they'll keep it on the whole first season at least, and see how it goes. And I think that'll be happening more and more. With Netflix doing series now, and Discovery Channel has a TV show now, Amazon. So I think all these new models of media will hopefully help prevent that, and it'll just be up to fans to find their way to these shows and support them and let them know. And that's the other thing too. The degree to which fans can interact with shows now, again, was just starting when we went on the air now. But boy, fans can really let a network know if they love a show or not, whatever the ratings say. So hopefully you're heading into a new golden age where people really, where the audience can really start dictating what they want to see rather than the advertisers dictating what they want you to see.
Exactly.
That's my sermon for the day.
Okay, thank you, Father. Lisa Soros Rex says, Scott, do you relate to Ted in any way? Any similarities?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Ted. I mean, the aspects of me that are in Ted, as I've said, his self-deprecating humor, his lack of self-confidence, all come from big parts of me in my past. I mean, I've had many people who, when they see me, want to offer me psychiatric help because I don't think I'm quite as far gone as Ted, but I understand him very well, and I think his loyalty as a friend is something that's part of me. There's big parts of Ted that are me. There's a lot that's not, but I think kind of who he is at his core. The best parts of him, I would like to say, are very much a part of me, and the bad parts are parts, that I've either worked on and hopefully done a good enough job on, or I'm still working on. I mean, he's a wonderfully flawed guy, but I think, when you get down to it, he's a guy with a really big heart, and that's for good and for bad in going through this world, and I certainly understand that. But I love the guy. He's great. I mean, he was very difficult to play, and he was in a lot of ways, and it was as I kind of mentioned earlier, it was kind of the challenge over the 5 years of the show to figure out how to kind of leave him at the office at the end of the day, because he would definitely infiltrate my life, and it would take me, at the end of every season, it would take me at least a month to where I felt like myself again and could relate with my friends at a level where I really felt like myself, because the difficult parts of Ted and the self-loathing in Ted was very wearing and very hard to psychologically to kind of leave behind when the cameras would shut off, because it's like I said, it's part of me that I understand, and it's perhaps been part of my life in the past. But to tap into it on a daily basis for 5 years was definitely a challenge.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I'm sure after, Ted got jerkatwork.com, that was really exhausting as well to come home to after that.
Well, that was just getting the smell of that many naked men out of my nostrils. I mean, to have just a room full of naked guys under hot light just sweating. It's not quite the perfume that I find intoxicating.
Exactly.
It may be for some, but for me that was the hardest thing. Yeah, Jerker Work was. I think Peter and I were both kind of grateful when that storyline went away.
Yeah, bless you guys. It's hard. It was a lot of fun to watch, though. But I can imagine
it was a lot. Yes, no, it was a lot of fun. I mean, the comedy of it was enjoyable for us, but the actual technical shooting of it could often be a little like, oh God.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I'm just going to do a couple more Twitter questions, and then we're going to talk about what we're working on, what you're working on now. Lisa also asks, and this is something I just thought about also when I was rewatching the series. But so thank you, Lisa, for this question. She said, for Scott, do you think Ted still had a crush on Michael towards the end of the series, or did he just get over that? Because that's something that never really got a closure to, because, when Teddy was in the coma, I think it was Brian and Michael or somebody went over to the house and opened up the closet door, and there was all these pictures of Michael. And then, we saw over the couple seasons after, the way Teddy looked at Michael. So what do you think happened there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that was, one of the things in early on in the show that I really keyed into in terms of the character as well, because I've had those unrequited crushes on friends of mine, and that kind of bittersweet, melancholy heartbreak of having those crushes that are never going to happen. That's part of Ted that I absolutely loved and loved playing and really related to. And I think, in terms of him and Michael, I think he started really pulling away from that, when he was called out on it by Brian. And I think, especially, I think he remains protective of Michael throughout the whole series. But I think especially once, because Ted initially was against him being involved with Ben because he was worried about his HIV status. He and Debbie were kind of the two to be concerned about that. But I think once he saw him find this happiness, I think that dissolved. So I think, I don't think by the end of the series the crush was still there. I think he still loved him dearly, but I don't think it was a romantic crush anymore. I think it started dissolving at that moment when he was called out on it by Brian and told, that if I cared about him, I needed to let him go as well too. And there's a beautiful speech I think at the birthday party that Ted gives to him in the first season, where he's speaking to Michael, but he's speaking to himself as well when he says something to the effect of love something that's real, in terms of stop fixating on Brian. And this is when he was with Dr. Dave, the chiropractor, and he's trying to tell him, go for something real, but he's really telling that to himself as well. And so I think from that point on, he really kind of let Michael go romantically. So that by the end of the series, definitely, and especially by the time he was, very much in love with Ben, I think it was gone, and it was a more platonic love that he had for him. But that's a great question.
Yes, definitely. And I'll just take one last one. What's his favorite Ted quote, if you remember any of them?
Oh, sure. Well, the absolute number one is the whole speech about that he gives to Emmett at when Emmett is trying to turn himself straight, and Michael tells him, when Emmett's, I can't remember. I think Michael says something to him like they were going to miss his Liza impressions, and Emmett says, thanks, but I don't think God loves it quite as much as you do, and Ted says, I think God loves it even more because he made you in his image, and that whole speech, I don't remember it word for word now. But that sentiment there, that's the essence of Queer as Folk, that he loves, that he made us in his image, and he loves us all. That's what the whole show's about, and that's I'm absolutely proudest of having gotten to deliver that speech. I wish I could remember it right now. Out of my sofa, but it was. You'll forgive me. It was 11 years ago.
Definitely.
And I think it was some of the most beautiful writing that Dan and Ron did on the whole series. I absolutely loved that speech.
Yeah. Now, so let's talk about 2014. I looked on your website earlier when I was doing some research, and you have a web series coming out. And I'm really excited to, it says Sharon Glass. I saw that. I was like, wow, rekindle that relationship.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. It's something I finally finished writing last summer, and I had written a part with Sharon very much in mind when I wrote it, and it's very, very loosely based and highly fictionalized version of my search for my birth parents, because I was adopted and was fortunate enough to find my birth parents back in 1999. So that was kind of the impetus to kind of tell that story in a humorous way. And so it's very fictionalized and very tone-wise. It's very much like the British version of The Office. It's very uncomfortable and very awkward and very much my sense of humor. So I wrote a couple parts with people in mind. One was Sharon's role, which is the woman who's the intermediary, the one who actually does the search for the birth parents, who's this very wacky woman who loves owls. And then the other part I wrote specifically for someone was for Jerry O'Connell, who I've been lucky enough to do a couple projects with, and he's playing a highly exaggerated version of himself that I was very pleased he wasn't insulted by and actually found quite funny. So he wants to do it as well. And then I've also met this wonderful actress, Linda Park, who was on Star Trek Enterprise, who's going to play the director of the documentary that's being made about the main character. And so we've got some more casting to do, and I'll probably be hitting people up for money sometime soon on the internet to help fund that. But we're looking to shoot it this summer. And it was the greatest Christmas gift I got. I had sent the script originally to Sharon back when I finished writing it, but she was just finishing up shooting Burn Notice, and then she had a number of other things going on, so she actually didn't get to read it until just before Christmas. And she called me up the day after she read it, and she absolutely loved it and loved the character and already had some wonderful ideas for the character and how she wants to play her. And so I'm thrilled that she's agreed to be in it as well, and I'm really, really proud of it. So that's kind of something that's taking my attention, when I'm not out there panhandling and asking people to put me in their TV shows and their movies and their plays and stuff. But
what was it like to be on? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. What are you gonna ask?
Oh, I was going to say I did remember somebody's question earlier. It already scanned by, but regarding the Fosters, what was it like to work on that with Peter?
That was very, very sweet of Peter. I mean, he called me up kind of out of the blue with that, and at the time, especially, he didn't know the fate of what the show would be. They'd been allowed to shoot the first half of their first season, and then the network wanted to see, if they would, bring it back and let it finish the full season, and if they would bring it back for all these kind of things. He wasn't quite sure, and so because he was worried that it might not have a future, he wanted to make sure that one way or another he got me on the show, which was very, very sweet of him, and it was great. I mean, I was really honored, and the set is, what was great about it was, it made me flash back to 2000 when we all first got the show, and we were all up in Toronto and kind of first meeting and getting to know each other for the first time. But we sat down and we talked, about what do we want our set to be like, because when you're the cast of a show, it's kind of up to you to set the tone for how you want things to be. And we talked very much about how, we wanted it to be a set of love and support and all that kind of stuff, and to be a welcoming place. And we worked really hard at that for 5 years, and, we were definitely known as a set that people loved to come work on. And so it was great to go work on Peter's show, that's his own baby now, and to find the set exactly the same way, that he kind of made sure that tone was there, that the cast was so sweet and so welcoming, and, down to the last member of the crew, it was a lovely, beautiful place to go to work. And I think it shows in the end product, the show is really terrific. And so I'm glad to have been, however small a part, to just kind of at least been a part of its beginnings, and was so touched and honored that Peter would think of me and ask me to come do that. It was really, really sweet of him. And my mother was happy because she always wanted me to be a doctor, and I got to put on Scrubs. So
there you go.
It was great.
Are you still working on 12 Angry Men, or is that over with?
No, 12 Angry Men closed at the beginning of December. It kind of ended up overlapping a week or so with shooting the episode of Bones. The end of the year was very busy. But no, I finished 12 Angry Men, and that was another great experience. I had 2 just amazing theatrical experiences last year, and that's wonderful too, because that's something that's my roots, is doing live theater, and I try to make sure I do at least one a year, and to have gotten to do 2 really incredible productions last year was a real treat, and I feel very fortunate for that. And so hopefully more will be coming down the pike for that as well. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, I will definitely come, and now that I'm back in California, I'll definitely come and support you when you when you are back on stage.
That'll be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I just want to thank you so much. This has been I can't believe the hour's already up already. I mean, I could go on for hours and hours, but I wanted to make sure to cover all the fans' questions. Thank you so much. I mean, there were so many more, but I just, we got to realize that an hour is just not enough time to catch up with old friends.
Right. We'll do it again sometime. We'll get to the other one sometime in the future.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you for all the support as always.
Yeah, there's lots of love out there. They're all they're just tweeting me saying, no, don't leave us. But you can always tweet Scott on Twitter at Scolo, SCOLO, and then also you can go to scottlowell.com and you can check out all the latest. It's updated with all the information that you need. And if you're in Spain and you are like one of the 1 million people that don't know about the tour coming there, you can go to his website and click there for tickets as well. So it will be a lot of fun, I'm sure, to you make sure you share pictures and stuff when you go to Spain with the cast and stuff. We definitely would love to see some of that, since we can't come. For us that can't come.
Right, absolutely, and hopefully we'll be doing more of these in other places, and because I know there's fans all over the world and parts of the world that feel like they haven't gotten the love yet, and hopefully other convention organizers out there will bring us to a city near you sometime soon, because we sure do love getting out to meet you all. It's really such an honor, and it's so heartwarming for all of us to feel your support, and it's a small thing we can do to get back to come out and meet you guys. So hopefully we'll be able to do that with more of you soon. Yeah,
and don't forget this Friday on Fox at 8 p.m. Scott will be back on Bones, and it's also the episode with Michelle Clooney, who's best known for Melanie Marcos on Quarters Folk. So definitely you get a double whammy for us fans out there. So don't miss that. Scott, thank you so much for being here tonight. And when we maybe this spring or summer when things start heating up for your web series Adoptable, we'll help promote the Kickstarter or whatever it is that you're working on to help raise funds for you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Douglas. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
No problem. See you on Twitter. Take care, okay?
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. I want to thank you, everybody, for tuning in to tonight's show. This is just part one of a two-part show. There will be a different link that I'm going to be tweeting out in just a minute for Ryan Scott Green, who played Brandon in the end of Season 5 of Quarters Folk. He's going to be joining us. So our RS Greeners, I think that's the hashtag that's out there. So I'll be back in about a half hour. So enjoy. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope I covered everything that you wanted to cover. I tried to get to as many Twitter questions as possible. So with that being said, let's just get in the mood.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, take it down.
Thanks for listening to tonight's show. Be sure to see what's coming up next at www.onairwithdouglas.com. With over 240 shows in the archive, take a look around and listen to all the great guests you missed. Follow the show on Twitter at OnAirWithDoug. Until next time, have a great night.